What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Thursday night, March 2nd, 2023. It is about 9:23 p.m. here along the west coast in California. 43 degrees and clear skies out here in Northern California right now. A 1.1, the latest quake here into the California area where it's been relatively quiet as far as earthquake activity goes. Over the past couple days. All right, looking at the latest 24-hour map here of USGS earthquakes. Seen some movement here in the last hour up around the Tonga Trench, but somewhat deep, considering all this deeper activity and adjustment here along the Vanuatu area and the Solomon Trench area, well, south of here. Definitely looks like things starting to kick back up, back building here into the deeper regions. We did see that plate boundary motion in full force here with that 6.5 that came in earlier this morning. We watched that migration kick up here along the plate boundary and eventually make its way over here to the Solomon Sea, although I was expecting a little bit more of the larger side earthquake around this area, but still we did see a little bit of movement kicking up here into the area of the Solomon Islands following all of the movement this morning. But it looks like now things, as I mentioned, starting to back build here around the Tonga Trench, adding further strain west and northwestward here across the areas of the Pacific Plate. So we'll watch that and keep that in mind here as we go into the evening. Nothing showing up here across New Zealand. I was just checking that out on the GeoNet servers. Looks like about 3 minutes ago they did have a 3.0 South Island, New Zealand. Looks like southwest of the Milford Sound area, just off the Alpine Fault here. I was going to say Calpine. A little bit of activity, 2.7 North Island. We've been seeing this off and on throughout New Zealand, but this is kind of very typical along a major plate boundary. I haven't really seen any major swarms out here across the New Zealand area that would indicate some areas of interest. But definitely, it's similar to California. There's always going to be earthquake activity here across New Zealand. And it's just bouncing back and forth in between the North and South Island along the plate boundary. There is some of it across the area of this valley that sits pretty much right on the Alpine Fault here, picking up some of the more prominent signatures from those 3s and 2s. But other than that, I'm sure a beautiful day in New Zealand. Just be on guard and stay safe. Let's see what else we got here across the area. Papua New Guinea. This area was pretty active. Let's go back to the last 30 days and see what we have here across the area. We're going to look at just a couple different quiet zones and see maybe where the next potential. See, these are. See if we can bring 4.5 up and above. Maybe we can see certain areas. I was expecting a little bit of further movement here across the Solomon Islands, around the South Solomon Trench. It seems as though the movement this morning kind of did a hop skip. Yeah, goodness. Over across this area and ended up around the Solomon Sea. But I still think we have the potential of watching some further movement along this subduction zone. It's been relatively light as far as earthquake activity goes here in that major plate boundary, that subduction zone area. And of course up here, look at this. The northern end of the Java Trench here around the Andaman Sea, up northward into Myanmar area. Very quiet. This is still one of our major watch zones here for some potential larger scale movement. Stress is built up out there, that's for sure. The Kuril Trench up here did see a number of earthquakes. The largest was a 6.0 down in Japan, but specifically around the Kuril Trench, most of the activity we've seen was relatively deep earthquake activity and minor below the 4.0 threshold. So deeper activity adding further strain up here along the subduction area of the Kuril Trench. We'll continue to watch that for some movement. All right, see what we got here for today across the area. The last earthquake, it looks like a 5.2, speaking of the Crocom-Chaka Trench. Within the, what do we got here for the time frame? 22:14. It's not even 10 o'clock here yet. I don't know where that's coming from. Looks like UTC time of 06:14. Let's see, 06:14. Looks like, I'm not for sure what's going on here. Twilight zone? Maybe that's because of the next day, I guess. I don't know. That's weird. Normally, universal time is consistent. So 06:14. And I got a UTC time of 05:26. It's not even... What's going on here? The Twilight Zone? See what we got here. These guys are stating the same thing, so I don't know if that's a some type of error on their part, but universal time is universal. Doesn't matter what time zone you're in. So yeah, I'm kind of odd to see that. It's not 22:14. Goodness. Let me double check. Yeah. Even on my phone, still says 9:28 in the PM. Normally these are localized times here, so a little bit on the odd activity there, USGS. Either way, it looks like there was an earthquake being recorded here, 40 kilometers deep. Most of the activity, though, throughout the morning and early afternoon time period here, scattered across the region. We did see a 5.0 coming in earlier this evening as well in the Turkey region, 6.1 kilometers deep, although not quite as active, right? As days past, that will eventually fade off, and then occasionally we may get another 5 or mid-5 or even a 6 or so. As far as the aftershock activity goes, there's been quite a few 2s and 3s, but the USGS only showing pretty much 4.0 and above, although I see a couple 4-pointers in there that's being left out. Goodness, what do we got here in Turkey? 3.4. I think the USGS is kind of putting these scattered odd earthquakes across the map here, because normally they do not report anything below a 4.0. In the past couple of nights here in the updates, they've been throwing in an earthquake or two underneath that threshold. Rather interesting, but hey, I guess we'll take it. It has been reviewed. Just a little on the odd side. Hey, if you're going to report one of them, might as well report all of them, I think. Indian Ocean, southwest Indian Ocean looks pretty clear as well. We got a little bit of activity kicking up here, east, I should say, of the South Sandwich Trench. A 5.6 coming in just within the last hour. See, now that's the correct time. 20:53 is not quite. Well, yeah, 20:53 would be 8:53 here, my time. So that's still within the last hour. Not for sure what's going on up north with that time difference. But 5.6 and a 5.2. Prior to that, a 5.2. So a little bit of bouncing back and forth here between the plate boundaries. Got a major subduction zone here. I don't believe this area is primed for another large earthquake. The 8.1 that struck here in 2021, following, well, a swarm of earthquake activity in the 6s and 7 range, should be sufficient enough for pressure release. I don't believe we've seen enough time passage for a large earthquake here, but we are still seeing some activity bouncing back and forth here, and more specifically over the last couple days or so, a little bit of, actually, I'd say the last 30 days. We've seen most of the activity here confined to a little swarming area on the northern side of the South Sandwich Trench. But overall seismic activity on the uptick and increased here around the area. So we'll continue to watch that as it evolves tonight. The South America region, 5.2 earlier into the Peru area. Got the Peru-Chile Trench, relatively shallow earthquake. The EMSC model globe here indicates relatively quiet conditions. A couple other smaller quakes there on the map, but overall seismic activity relatively mild. Do you have a 4.0 coming in right now to the Portion of the Middle America Trench, it looks like, just up here. This area has been seeing a little bit of activity, scattered out and about. No major movement yet. The largest was a 5.7 into the Mexico area, 99 kilometers deep into the Middle America Trench. So continue to watch that. It's been actually fairly active, specifically within this plate boundary region. One area that's gone scary quiet is the Puerto Rico area. Look at that. Only one earthquake being reported tonight. A 2.2. That's almost unheard of to see that completely stop like that. So not for sure what's going on there, but definitely keep an eye on that region. The Alaska area looks like a typical day up here. This region north has seen a little bit of swarming activity here. I wonder if that's what I was seeing wrong. Oh, goodness, who knows? One of these days, my mind is somewhere else currently. But, yeah, we did see a 4.3 earlier this morning. And some activity, some aftershock activity, it looks like, into the Alaska region. I'm going to double check this area over here because we kind of got mixed up in the time stamp there. The timestamp dilemma, the twilight zone, so to speak. Quite a few 4s and 5s. Just going over the time here, seeing if we missed anything across the area. What's this 4.6 here into the, oh, that's going to be the Solomon Islands area. One of the newer earthquakes on the map. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Goodness. Yeah, so Alaska, pretty much typical movement up there. Pacific Northwest, relatively quiet. California has been definitely on the interesting side here. I haven't seen any major swarms, no major uptick in movement. There's just only been a handful of quakes across the area, nothing spectacular. A 1.4 near Beckworth, California, never heard of that area. Just off of the Sierraville region. But California has been awfully quiet here recently. And most of any sizable movement, and there really hasn't been any, talking about 2.5 and above, has been confined up here to the Calpine hydrothermal operations here around the Cobb Mountain area of the Clear Lake volcanic field. That's the all magnitudes map here over the last 24 hours, and still continuing, although a little bit of a dying down of the activity. Last 7 days of movement here, I'm sure, is quite impressive. 461 earthquakes. If we were to bring that back the last 30 days, whoa, 1,558 earthquakes here within the vicinity of the Clear Lake volcanic field, and the majority of these have been centered. There's a new region over here to the west, but most of them looks like it's right around specifically this area. If we go to the satellite view, it looks like it's really close here to one of the operational plants here. But I'm thinking there might be something new out here that's not showing up on the satellite view that's creating some of these other earthquakes. There's quite a few hydrothermal plants in the Clear Lake volcanic field out there. But aside from that, goodness, it's been awfully quiet. We haven't seen any major swarms. Now, quietness can be a bad sign, but if you look at the regional activity as a whole, most of the eastern Pacific here has been relatively quiet. That's due to the pressure difference here. Westward pressure movement, when it stays active out here along the west areas, the western Pacific plate and adjacent plates here, things tend to calm down. Not all the way. There's never going to be no earthquakes in California. There's always earthquakes happening along a major plate boundary. But far as elevated movement, we're kind of still into that quiet zone for now. So we'll watch and see how this develops following all this larger scale movement here across the western Pacific and adjacent plates. Southern California, not a whole lot going on. We got one earthquake. Looks like just off the Elsinore fault here. It's a little, I shouldn't say little, it's actually a pretty lengthy fault system. Doesn't look like my faults are going to work tonight. Not for sure. Let me see what's going on. Yeah, kind of weird. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But either way, a little earthquake there. Nothing going on across the San Andreas Fault. Very minor activity. Yellowstone National Park. Notice there is a handful of earthquakes up here. The largest, a 1.8 earlier. Earlier this afternoon. I was just checking this out, and looks like there's a little spitter-sputter of earthquake activity spun up here a few hours ago. Most of this activity centered over around the Upper Falls area, kind of in an odd region. Looks like that's where the most of the seismic activity is showing up the strongest. I haven't really seen too much swarming there recently, but there's a number of earthquakes. A lot more, obviously, than what the USGS is showing for the 4 quantity. I'd probably say a good 15 or 20 earthquakes centered around this area, but nothing major going on for now. Let's see, eastern portion of the country, all pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on across the southern plains, aside from some severe weather activity here throughout the day today and the evening. It's getting rather interesting out there for this season, spring storm season, I guess. Let's see here, space weather activity across the Solarham site. We'll double check this. There we go. There is the blackout image here I was just chatting about last night. This is pretty much a radio signal blackout. I believe this is it. The spacecraft up there monitoring this data, well, the Earth passes in front of it, and I believe it's the Earth, and it creates this blackout. Noticing we're just recovering from that data blackout. Can't really see it too much here on this chart, but you can on the other one. And it does that every 24 hours or so, obviously with rotation. And a lot of times when you click on this image, you'll be able to see the outline of the Earth. Again, I believe it's the Earth, and the curvedness, right? The roundness of the Earth. Not going to go into the flat Earth theory, but a lot of times you'll see that on there. It looks like that's what's going on right now. Coronal hole 81 is stretching across the northern hemisphere of the sun. That is in a position to provide us with some enhancements with the 3-day forecast. It looks like they've added on here around the fifth time frame, expecting maybe a G1 class storm around the 5th. We'll go into that a little bit more as we get closer to that date. But far as space weather activity in the flare department goes, things are looking somewhat minor. May see some further flaring from this departing sunspot, but pretty much out of view now on the north western side of the sun. Over here, got a new developing sunspot that looks pretty promising here in the coming days. We'll watch this as it rotates into view and provides us with hopefully a couple different flares. I'm not for sure what's going on. Yeah, normally you'll be able to see at least a little bit of imagery. It may take a couple minutes for it to update or whatnot, but if you get a chance, check that out. There's been a whole bunch of those events. Let's see here. I believe that's about it for space weather. I do want to go over here and check out the current weather out here. Let me go over here to the windy map, and we'll check out some of the satellite imagery here with the weather radar. That line of storms is, well, it moved through the Dallas-Fort Worth area earlier, created some spin-ups and some strong straight-line winds. Right now, we're heading into the Shreveport, Louisiana area with a bunch of lightning and thunder, and the potential still exists for some severe weather throughout the evening time period. So watch this entire line here. It's definitely pretty active. So let's see what we got here on the radar scope imagery. Go over here to Shreveport, and right now it looks there's a tornado watch that has been issued over here for Louisiana and Arkansas as well. We got one tornado warning up near the Lake Hamilton area. It looks like, I know there's a tornado warning there. specifically. I don't want the watch, I want the warning. Let's see here. I believe that's up in Arkansas, yeah. Looks like Melbourne, it looks like, heading straight towards that area. Let me back out and see what else we have. A couple severe thunderstorm warnings along this line, which is expected. Again, the tornado watch sits in a good portion of Louisiana and all throughout the Texarkana area, Arkansas region, almost up to Little Rock, but it's in this red line, this red box. That's the tornado watch area. So a little bit noisy out there, I'm sure, for the folks in that region of the states. I was hoping to see this imagery before we go, but that's all right. I'll try and catch it and get a screenshot of it. But anyway, for now, folks, I'm going to jump off here. The aurora forecast looks pretty fairly minimal right now. Not a whole lot going on up north or south, but I'll continue to watch this and report back if necessary. In the meantime, stay safe out there. Got a whole lot of activity and quite a bit of pressure movement going on out here along the western Pacific. So just be on guard, stay safe. We'll catch you guys back here sometime tomorrow. Have a good one, everyone.